In about 1 week's time, the Switch is going to be officially 1 year old, and what a first year it has been. This system has been completely destroying, now let's see how. First, let's just talk hard sales numbers. Now, the last official news we got from Nintendo was for up until the end of December, which basically marks the first 10 months for the system, during which it sold 14.86 million units worldwide, 4.8 of which were in just the US, making it the fastest selling system in US history. USA! And that momentum is not stopping just yet, with January having more Switches sold than Xbox Ones or PS4s. It's by like a 3% margin, but it's still true. Now, why is this? How did this happen? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. First though, let's just talk about something else that can still be backed by a lot of data, and that's game sales. The Switch had a fantastic year as far as games released on it, most of which was thankful to two of its biggest first-party titles, Super Mario Odyssey and Zelda Breath of the Wild, both of which sold incredibly well, are adopted by the majority of Switch owners, and both games are some of the most well-reviewed games in gaming history. And it's not as though those are the only two good games the system has. I mean, we had a lot of other great first-party titles last year, like Splatoon 2 and ARMS, and arguably even more important, we saw a lot of third-party support that just wasn't there for the Wii U or the later years of the Wii. For instance, we had Bethesda porting some of its biggest titles like Skyrim and Doom over to the system. We had other third-party companies making exclusive games to the system, like Ubisoft making Mario Rabbids Kingdom and Koei Tecmo doing Fire Emblem Warriors. And that's just talking about the big name companies. There's also been a huge push for the system for indie games, whether that's original stuff like Celeste, or a lot of great games getting ported to it that have found their true home on the system, whether that's Oxenfree, Darkest Dungeon, Enter the Gungeon, Shovel Knight, even a great way to play Rocket League handheld. And it's worth noting too that all these games put together, plus the ones that are on the way, already make a library for the Switch that is larger than the one the Wii U had 5 years to build, which, explains a lot why the system has already outsold the Wii U's lifetime sales. Now, I don't think the success of the Switch, though, can be attributed just to the great game library, although that certainly doesn't hurt. I think one of the big things, though, is just this concept of what the Switch is, where it's both this handheld and this docked system, and that's an idea that is very easily communicatable to people. I think one of the big reasons why the Wii U failed is because to this day, there are still people who think the Wii U is just the tablet part of the system and that it's some kind of add-on for a regular Wii, which it's not, it's a whole new system. But that's exactly the problem, people couldn't figure that out. With the Switch, though, it's this visual thing that you can get right away. Oh, you take the controller off the tablet and give it to someone, now it's multiplayer. Oh, you put it in this dock and now it's on your TV. It sells the concept right away, and it adapts to so many different lifestyles. And that adaptability plays a huge role also in how the system is done so well, because it works for so many different schedules. I mean, you can have one person who loves using it in docked mode when they get back from work or home from school, or another person that always uses it in handheld, or someone else that uses a balance between to fit their schedule. The point is that whether or not a person prefers it in one method or another, they're all using the system and they're all enjoying it. It's this great combination of nostalgic great games like Zelda and Mario that are both bringing back these old memories but also doing something different, new, and exciting, with this system itself, which is a total reinvention of how people approach handheld gaming or even at-home gaming, that makes it this unique idea that just worked so well. Now, while the Switch has sold really well, I think it's important to keep in mind that it did that while being far from a perfect console. I mean, this thing definitely also had its problems over this past year. For instance, back at launch, there were a lot of questions regarding just the physical design of it. Having the only charge port being on the bottom, which sure makes sense when you dock it, but doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you want to charge it while it's in tabletop mode. Or the fact that the way the dock is designed can cause the system to overheat, slightly warping the system, or even risk scratching the system from repeatedly putting it in the dock and taking it back out. Which, yeah, some people have learned how to live with some of these problems and deal with them and work around them and be careful, but they are problems nonetheless, and those aren't the only ones. There's also Nintendo's bizarre approach to how they're handling online chat, a service that requires the use of an external app on your phone, and if you want to use chat with gameplay, well, you need to hook up this adapter to both your phone, Switch, and headset all at the same time, which just seems very unnecessary. There's other issues too, but things that will hopefully be fixable in time. For instance, Nintendo is constantly focused on this idea of having a premium online subscriber service, but it keeps being pushed back, and it's starting to become a little less clear what all is going to be entailed in that package. There's also the fact that, as of right now, the Switch has very little focus on media. Basically, the only real media app we have at all is Hulu. And that's it. Nothing else for movies or television, nothing for music. Something that, while the system doesn't necessarily absolutely need, would certainly help in this modern day competing with other systems. Thankfully though, despite these problems, as we've said, the Switch has been doing well, and it looks like it's going to continue to do well for years to come. Mario and Zelda are going to be tough to follow up, and Nintendo's already got a lot of stuff planned for the rest of this year and beyond, whether that's more first-party stuff like Metroid Prime 4, Bayonetta 3, a new Yoshi and a new Kirby game, or even more ports from the Wii U that will probably outsell the Wii U versions, like Hyrule Warriors or Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. And what's really interesting to me is that we not only have these great first-party titles that we can look forward to for the year, and even some third-party stuff that's in development as well, but Nintendo is continuing to try and innovate on top of what the system already is, with Labo coming in April, which looks utterly ridiculous and amazing, but tons of fun for kids. And maybe also for certain fully grown adults that can't let go of fun childish things. And what's craziest about all this is that as exciting as all those things are, there's still so much more Nintendo could do that they're just keeping quiet on. For instance, Pokemon. Pokemon has been one of the most successful series that has been keeping the 3DS line going, and there's talk of us getting one on the Switch, which a transition like that could mean something totally different for the franchise. And that's not the only one. There's one even bigger that we just absolutely need. Where is Smash?